specialty coffee, the lexicon of single estate, single origin, micro lots, has become very much part of the mainstream. My mum knows what a single origin is now. Whereas 10 years ago when I was teaching coffee and I'd ask people where coffee came from, 9 out of 10 had no idea. Now when I teach coffee, 9 out of 10 say it comes from a tree and it's a cherry.
Melbourne's in a really exciting place. We've come in leaps and bounds very quickly over the last 5 years. There's much better green quality coffee coming into the country now. And there's a lot more awareness at a consumer level. There's a lot more choice than there was 5 years ago. Firstly, there's much more awareness on the seasonality of the coffee. So 5 years ago you would go into a cafe and a lot of the coffee that was being served in different cafes around Melbourne was old crop coffee. Secondly, there's a lot more transparency about what people are using within their coffee blends, and there's a celebration of where the coffee comes from, and that story is now being transferred to the customer. I think there's been also a trend of people buying better quality beans to use at home.
People want to see what they can get out of each different coffee, how each can change and how each different ones extract.
For us, when I say we direct trade, we direct trade. I know the name of the farmer, his wife, his children, their donkey, their dog, and we've been buying coffee from them for 7 years. It's not just about branding, it's about authentic practices.
They're becoming familiar with the coffee at a farm level, which is really exciting, and building relationships like you would a particular vineyard. Instead of them celebrating or saying, like Brazilian coffee, they're now saying, I love this particular coffee from this particular farm from this country. So it's going down to an estate level, which is something that we're really passionate about. 20 years ago, I can remember my parents drinking cask wine, and it would be, claret, and it would be from, a country, but you wouldn't know anything about it. Now you go into a wine store and you buy, a beautiful wine from a particular vineyard, and there's a lot of information about the variety and the estate that it comes from. The same is happening in coffee. I would say at the specialty end of the market, not necessarily at the more commercial end, but the name of the farm and the provenance of where that coffee comes from, and the story behind who has produced that coffee and the varieties that have been used and how it's been processed are being communicated to customers.
There's lots of similarities between your palate, you're tasting it, and then you're sort of saying, oh, that tastes like cherries, or that tastes like toffee or caramel or chocolate. You want to go to the next place and you want to taste something different at that cafe and keep your palate developing.
Australia is a good example because 20 years ago we were drinking cask wine, and when you went to a restaurant you got red or white. Now Joe, very, very average, understands what a Chablis, Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Noir are. Now we've got a situation where people are saying, I want an Ethiopian, Yergachev, or I want a Colombian Centario Geisha. There's a number of coffee drinkers. There's coffee nerds, and those guys are on top of the detail, on par with our roasters. They know the farms, they know the farmers, they know the donkeys, they know the detail. Then there's fashionista coffee nerds, and they just know what's cool, and so they gravitate towards cool. They're the young people, but I think the older people who have an established wine palate and therefore a general palate are understanding coffee. You come and they understand, they ask me what the roast profiles are like, they ask me whether it's a filter, siphon, pour over, espresso, or whatever, Chemex, and that isn't, certainly in my customer base, that's very much my everyday customer.
There's a celebration of the differences that can exist in different lots and in different coffees. So I think historically there's been a focus on trying to get a very consistent coffee that is always going to taste the same, whereas we're very passionate about celebrating the differences that exist by season and by region and by variety and by processing and all of those things.
It's only been since the last few years, since coffee has evolved so much, that the enthusiasts are becoming more and more in drives, and more people are asking for different types of single origins, or what's your house blend made up of, so they can see the subtle differences in each different coffee.
It's good keeping people interested, like the repeat customers. They want to know where the coffee bean's coming from, and more that's happening.
Coffee's a drug, and with every drug there are cultures associated to that drug use, and people are very protective and religious about those experiences. I think it's something that's part of our daily routine. I don't think it's a fad. I don't think specialty is coming in and then just going away. I think it's coming in and becoming a massive irritant for large commercial roasters who will need to get on that bandwagon or not, because that bandwagon, I think the premium end, which is the space we're in, you need to be in that space.
I wouldn't even put the two side by side because I think they're trying to achieve very different things. I think Lavazza's got it's trying to achieve a very consistent cup profile, and it's trying to focus mainly on the brand, whereas within Specialty we're trying to focus on the provenance and the traceability and the seasonality of the product.
My issue is going to be how big companies do that, because we've got some large franchises in Australia, like Gloria Jeans, who have tried to move into the speciality space, but it doesn't translate well to the end user. They don't believe the story. Even though I know that Gloria Jeans buy some great coffees. In fact, they buy some Cup of Excellence coffees, and I know their head roaster, and some of their coffees are great. It doesn't translate because people don't associate Gloria Jeans with speciality. They associate Gloria Jeans with vanilla lattes. If you understand speciality coffee at all, you understand that coffee is a fruit, and it's in season, and it's fresh. And therefore you understand that it needs to be picked and shipped within 4 weeks, and that it needs to be roasted and consumed within 2 weeks. Last time I looked at Lavazza packaging, that wasn't the case. The use by date was on the bag, not the roast date. That's a fundamental flaw in the story. And so I think the challenge for multinationals or big commercial coffee roasters is going to be how they translate that message into mainstream.